Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the second webinar around Geoscape. For those of you that were on the webinar yesterday for the introduction to Geoscape. Today's presentation is getting under the hood a little bit more, so it's a technical approach to an introduction to Geoscape. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get going. The webinar will be recorded. You'll be sent a link of the session via the email address you provided when you registered once we sort of finish the webinar and package it up for you. Please use the message box to ask any questions as we go through, or you can just unmute briefly to ask the question and we'll answer questions wherever possible. There'll also be enough time at the end to ask more in-depth questions. I'd like to introduce you to the team on the call today. We would have had Marty, who you would have heard yesterday. She can't be here today. I'm Jerry Stanley. I'm the Product Portfolio Manager at PSMA. The person providing the technical overview today is Maria Atkins. She's one of our production analysts. Maria works in the engine room of Geoscape, and so she'll share her experience with you today. She's a passionate GIS tech who is also completing her Masters in Spatial Science, and I'm told to refer to her as #GeekGirl. And with that, I'll hand you over to Maria, and she can take us through today's presentation.
Thank you, Jerry. As Jerry mentioned, my name is Maria Atkins, and I'm a production analyst within the data expertise team. My role is primarily to do with process research and development, but also the maintenance development of our existing products. And in terms of Geoscape, as Jerry mentioned, I work on a day-to-day basis as on the vector side of Geoscape processing. Again, as Jerry mentioned, I've got a year left of my postgrad degree, and I'm hoping that will be over soon. So enough about me, and I'll start with the webinar. Well, type of the things we are going to go through today. So for those who missed out yesterday's webinar with Jerry, I'll provide a quick general overview of Geoscape in terms of the themes, the coverage, and also the updates. And then I'll explore the three themes and its associated data model. And if we have time, Jerry will provide a live demo, and we'll have time to answer more questions if needed. So with Geoscape, there are three themes. Our first theme is a buildings theme, which is a vector data set. It's a digital representation of the building outline. We also capture swimming pools, roof materials, elevation, height, and zoning. Our second theme is the trees data set. This is also our first raster, and also our surface cover. Whoops, sorry about that. Clicked ahead of road. So how do we decide what area to capture? So basically, if an area with a population greater than 200 people or with a significant industrial or commercial area has been defined as an urban area, any areas with the same criteria but with more of a cultural or accessibility sensitivities, we have defined it as a remote community. In all other regions, we have defined it as a rural balance. So in terms of coverage, we have a national coverage. So for all our states and territories, we are planning to include our island territories. So with Christmas and Coco Island, we'll consider that at a later time. But for our next release, we'll include Jervis Bay. So currently we have released building footprints in Queensland, New South Wales, ACT and South Australia. And now with our next release in June, we have planned to release more areas in New South Wales, Vic, Tas and WA, and also rural areas for all states and territories. At present, we have a quarterly updates for releases for them, but we have a more defined schedule on our Geoscape website. So for the next 10 or 15 minutes, I will be exploring each of the three themes. I'll be starting off the buildings theme and then moving on to the trees and surface cover. Then I will talk about the data model for each theme and its associated layers. So feel free to ask questions through the chat or chime in. But I have to apologise for the first for the content. It may be a tad dry, but it's important to understand the content in order to use Geoscape to the full potential of it. So some of you may immediately recognise what this data model represents and its purpose. So these are our data models for our 3 themes, and they basically show how each data is connected to each other. So on the bottom, we'll start with the buildings theme. Oops, sorry about that. So the buildings theme. So we have 15 spatial tables, 2 spatial tables, and 12 authority tables. Our surface cover theme. We have 2 variations for that, a 2 metre and a 30 metre variation, and also our trees theme. The data models here looks complex, but too complex to view, but as you can see, I've also included what it will look like once you open up in your preferred spatial visualization tool. So in this case, I've opened up an ARC catalog. So the bottom is the shapefile format and the top is the GeoTIFF formats. The reason why I wanted to show you the data models is to point out that in order to utilize Geoscape for your needs, you need to know that these tables are linked together by a common field. And this common field is to do with our persistent identifiers. So there are unique IDs that are found throughout the whole tables. So this unique ID is our building PID. This is what you need to use in order to join or to the other tables and tailor Geoscape to your needs. So when you open up the buildings theme in either in ArcMap or QGIS or any other programs you use, the 2 spatial tables you will see is the building polygon and the building points. So the building polygon is the building outline of the footprint, and the building point is the building centroid of the outline. The building footprints are projected to GDA 1994, and the Australian height datum is our target vertical datum. So this is a buildings theme opened up in ArcGIS. So as you can see, when you use ArcMap, you use the tool to identify, this will pop up obviously, and it's the same fields and attributes you see in the data model. Once you create a join to the buildings table, you'll see the essential backbone attributes. So it will tell you where it's located, locality and its state, how many addresses associated to that building footprint, and if there are any swimming pools and solar panels to them. And these are all joined on the building PID. So depending on how you obtain a copy of Geoscape, you may require or not require to join tables. So most of the hard work of joining tables will be done if Geoscape was obtained from our vendors. So this, what you see here right now, is a screenshot example of GeoVision from Pitney Bowes. So GeoVision has removed all the necessary manual joining of tables and provided Geoscape as an intuitive and comprehensive outline data set. If not, if you download it from our links, manual joins are required. So what you see here is an example of South Australia Geoscape in a FileGeo database format from our most current release in March. Relationships are included in the FileGeo database, so any layers relating to that building will be already a reference for you. This is an example for a shapefile. A bit more manual labour is required to join the tables. So there are pros and cons for each of the file formats, but it's ultimately up to preference of the user. I will go in more detail what for file formats are available later on during the presentation. As I mentioned before, in the buildings theme, there are 15 spatial tables. I've already mentioned 1 and 2 spatial tables. All the other tables in the data model refer to a layer of the buildings theme. I'm just going to stop. You've just got a question here regarding special licenses and plans for universities. Jared can answer this.
Yes, there are, and they're available through our resellers. You can get those off our PSMA Australia website.
Okay, continuing on. So all the other tables in the data model you saw earlier referred to a layer in the buildings theme. So all swimming pool information can be found in 3 tables: swimming pool, building swimming pool, and the swimming pool address tables. So the swimming pool table is the result from our multiple TomNod campaigns. TomNod is a project owned by our partner Digital Globe that uses crowdsourcing to identify objects and places in satellite imagery. We have utilised their services to identify swimming pools and solar panels for Geoscape. The building swimming pool table defines the relationship between a building and a swimming pool. So if a swimming pool that's identified in the swimming pool table have a swimming pool and it intersects a building polygon, a relationship is captured in this building swimming pool table. The swimming pool address table has a direct relationship with our GNAF products, which I'll mention more about this later on. So we are able to provide an address to a swimming pool location. More than 85% of swimming pools we have able to locate an address for. Regarding roof attributes of a building, so the eave height, the material of the roof, and also its type, whether it's a steep or a complex roof type, this information can be found in both the building roof and roof material tables. So the building roof and table provides the primary roof material code and the roof type code for each building. The primary roof material describes the main primary roof for that building. So its attributes are spectrally classified from a combination of shortwave infrared and visible and near infrared imagery bands. Our accuracy rate is measured in excess of 80% across suburban residential areas. However, in our commercial and industrial areas and also in high density residential areas, the classifications are a bit, accuracy are just a tad lower.
We've got another question's just come in. Are you doing all buildings, including sheds on residential properties?
So we capture buildings that has an area of greater than 3 meters squared. So if the shed is
9 meters squared, 3 by 3.
9 meters squared. Sorry about that. Yeah, so if the sheds are greater than 9 meters squared, it will be also captured.
And that's in the urban categorisation. If it's in the rural area, it's buildings greater than 25 square metres.
Hopefully that will answer your question. Continuing on, so the roof type code is a classification of shape type of the roof structure. It's derived from assessing the standard deviation of the elevation values intersecting the building polygon. So 90% of the roof type code of unobstructed buildings have been allocated. And so the roof material table contains all roof materials identified if a building roof has a combination of roof material types. So basically, if our building has more than one roof material type, it will be all captured in this roof material table building. So elevation and height attributes are detailed within the height above ground and elevation tables. Height above ground table provides a relative height in meters above the ground surface of each building footprint. So this is the maximum height identified within the building boundary and may include heights of plant rooms and also building fixtures that can be seen on top of the roof. The elevation table represents the building ground surface height in meters with respect to the Australian height datum. The elevation is calculated by taking the difference between the max elevation and corresponding ground pixel value from the digital elevation model derived from the digital surface model. The building tree table identifies any trees intersecting a building footprint. The heights are determined by the maximum intersecting digital surface model elevation of each tree pixel. The building zone provides a general indication of the planning zone per building footprint. I have to advise that the zoning attribute this table gives it's only a general indication and it should not be treated as an authoritative source. So all these tables can be joined to create your own tailored data set specific to your needs. So the remaining 4 spatial tables are linked to PSMA's other products. So Geoscape is not PSMA's only product. We have a suite of products relating to admin boundaries, so your locality boundaries, state boundary, and mesh blocks. Then we also have CAD-Light, which refers to the CAD and property boundary outlines. Transport topography includes roads, data sets, hydrology, green space, airports. And we also have and GNAF, which is a geocoded national address file. In Geoscape, we utilize 3 of these products. So GNAF, the address file, our relationship is captured in the building address table. So the number in the building a spatial table, there's a field called address count field. So the account in that field will tell you how many addresses are associated to that building. But it doesn't tell you what address, the actual address, unless you have access to our products. Our CAD-Light product captures our property and cadastre are captured in the building property and building CAD tables, and the administrative boundaries, particularly the mesh blocks, are captured in the building mesh block. How we create a linkage to these products are based on calculated scenarios, spatial queries. So if a building intersects one of our products, greater than or equal to either 5% or 10, depending on the type of linkage is being created of the building area, it is being captured in those 4 tables. So if you have access to our PSMA products, you can create table joins and obtain further attributes from those products. But if you don't, GNAF and administrative boundaries are free on data.gov. However, CAD-Light is available through a subscription service. So if you're keen to know more about our other products, you can visit our website, psma.com.au.
All right, as we go to the next slide, the questions come in. Have you mapped tree heights in rural locations?
Yes. No.
No, not in rural.
Not in rural, only in urban areas, because the tree heights are captured from our 2-metre raster data set, which is only in our urban areas. So in our rural is our 30-metre data sets. Hopefully that will answer your question. So we receive a lot of questions regarding how accurate Geoscape is. So positional accuracy is a measure of closeness of location of a spatial object in relation to the true position on Earth. So there are 2 types of accuracy we've measured, both horizontal and vertical. And the standards we use to measure this is the CE90, which is circular error, and the vertical LE90 for linear error. They are both statistical measures of error describing the position, accuracy, or satellite imagery. So in other words, how far off is the spatial object we see in our computer screens in relation to the real world. So the data received from Digital Globe, their satellite's accuracy is roughly around 4.5 metres. They have captured Geoscape in urban areas with an accuracy between 0.5 metres to 2.5 metres. But our external partners have measured Geoscape accuracy to be 1.5 metres. This is without including without CBD areas. However, the accuracy is down to 3.5 metres if it includes CBD areas. In rural areas, we have documented Geoscape's accuracy to be less than 10.9 metres. We have found them between 1.8 and 7 metres. But our external partners have measured her horizontal accuracy to be approximately 5.5 metres. In terms of our vertical positional accuracy, which relates to the quality of our elevation data. So this is a measure of Geoscape surface cover theme and also our elevation heights above ground tables. This source elevation data used for deriving building heights, the digital surface model accuracy is 2 metres with a relative accuracy of 1 metre. There are many factors that impact the quality, but these are not included and not limited to the age of the source image, the classification of the features in the imagery, emission of features, buildings that are obscured by trees or other objects, and the alternator angle of the source imagery. The information about the positional accuracy is further detailed in our product description document, which you'll also receive if you download a copy of Geoscape. All the information is on, I think it's on page 13 and onwards of the document. So before I move on covering the raster components of Geoscape, are there any other questions so far? Give time to people type. No. Then if not, then I'll continue on, or you can pop up the question and I'll answer the end of the presentation. So moving on to our raster data sets. The final two themes I will now cover relates our surface cover and the tree themes. So our surface cover features pixel representations of the Earth's surface. And this theme has two variations. One at a high resolution at 2 meter data set representing the surface cover within urban areas. And the other is a national resolution of 30 meters representing the surface coverage nationally. The surface cover 2 meter variation is used to derive the tree theme, sorry. And this theme is just basically a pixel representation of areas identified as having a tree coverage.
Right. Just before you go on to the next slide, we've had a question as to whether any building floor height data is integrated into the Geoscape data set. At this stage, no. Whilst we do provide the elevations at each of the vertices of the buildings in the data set, it doesn't actually have any information as to where the actual floor height would be within the data. Within tall buildings, rather than separating it into levels and trying to separate that, you can sometimes get level information out of GNAF for the address and separate that out, or use some algorithms based on what the building is, but we haven't included any of that in the product at this stage.
Hopefully that answers your question. So continuing on. So this is an example of our raster data set in ArcGIS. So this is an example in South Australia in Port Lincoln. What you see here is a 2 meter surface cover, which we use visible near infrared imagery bands. So 90%, more than 90% of the features you see here are correctly classified. This is of the same area, using our 30 meter surface cover raster data set. It's classified using Landsat imagery. The radar classification accuracy has been measured to above 85%. So in both data sets, there are 12 codes representing different types of surfaces like vegetation, water, building, and cloud cover, and etc. And our last theme, the trees theme, this is of the same area as well. In this case, I've applied a color gradual classification scheme. So the red you see there is the low trees, which is around 2 meters high. And then you'll see background colored variations of yellow and green, which are representing tall trees of up to 49 meters in height. So all efforts are made to provide an accurate height for all tree pixels, but due to issues like the resolution size and anomalies within our digital surface models or our digital elevation models, so these heights, there are a few portion of the pixels you see or you see will be higher than in the real world.
All right, just before we go to the next slide, we've got a question. Given the likely adoption of BIM, at least for infrastructure and large projects, will you use publicly sourced BIM to refine the building accuracy? The longer answer is probably yes. However, we've still got a few more months to go before we have all of the country covered by Geoscape. But as we go forward into the maintenance process, we're certainly looking at any of those types of sources as inputs into the data. And the reason why the data model has been created the way it is so that we can actually import that type of information and hold those types of attributes.
So, continuing on. The last thing we'll talk about is delivery formats. So the Geoscape product is available nationally, and again, as I mentioned before, the rolling schedule is available on our Geoscape website. So we are able to provide Geoscape in 6 different formats. So for our vector and spatial components, so the buildings theme, we have made available using Esri's shapefile and file database, map info tab, and also Oracle data pump formats. And our raster components, so that's our surface cover and trees theme, is made available using geotagged image file formats.
All right. Another question that's come in as to whether access can be made to GBDX as well as the shapefiles under an education license. It is correct that a lot of Geoscape is actually created using algorithms within the GBDX platform. For those that weren't on the call yesterday, it's the Geospatial Big Data platform that Digital Globe operate. I can say that we're actually bringing a GBDX node into Australia, all going well within coming months. It does have separate licensing and access privileges though, so we'll probably have to take that one up as a separate conversation later. All right, thank you very much, Maria, for your presentation. If there's anything that anyone has seen that needs further explanation, please contact us or let us know. Those of you that may be interested, we've got a few more minutes that I'm happy to just do a little bit of a show and tell around it. Probably 2 things, a little bit of an early look at some Perth data, but also show you a little bit about the GeoVision product from Pitney Bowes at the same time. Yesterday and also in the presentation today, there was a few pictures of screenshots from the GeoVision product. This is just one of our partners and how they are currently using Geoscape in some real life activities. There's a number of different ways in which you can look at the data. So you can switch on, you can find buildings with associations with swimming pools, the same thing with solar panels. You can also classify them by their primary roof material. All these things were basically within the data structures that Maria was showing earlier. One of the other cool parts that there is though, and if we switch on just a couple of these to give us some prettiness, you can actually then drop a point somewhere within GeoVision, and what it does is it actually does a reverse lookup against GNAF to actually find what it is. Instead of that having to be spatial, because you can link the GNAF ID directly from the building, you don't have to do it as spatial activities. You can actually just do it as a table join style activity. You can get the number of addresses that are there, knowing that from the Geoscape information, and information on the building details as you go through. And if I scroll down a little bit, you can also find out what the primary roof material is, and you can get into surface cover, which, as you would imagine, in that area, of course, is buildings. So that's GeoVision. There's a whole lot of information that you can find on it on the Pitney Bowes website. So that's a brief look at that one. And then to give you a bit of an insight into Perth. Perth is part of our next release, which should come out in June. I promised people yesterday if there was time I'd show a few pictures of it. So this is essentially is Perth. With all the buildings. I don't have all the different layers switched on, as you can imagine. However, to go from one of the questions before, if I see if there's smaller things in these areas, you'll start seeing smaller features in the backs of properties rather than necessarily just being the buildings. And as you sort of scroll around, you can basically see the smaller areas in the back. If I go out of Perth for a second, they're all based on filters on heights. For those, let me get rid of an image for a second. if I jump out here and jump in here for a second, outside of Perth, there's a number of buildings in the rural areas. So these rural areas, some of them are quite small, just minor buildings in different sites. Others of them, when this finishes rendering in a second, others of them are where there's numerous buildings for all manner of reasons, whether that's mining or forestry, as well as everything else. We've got a couple of questions. Can this package also show the activity at the building, type of business, primary function? So the planning information and the planning code that's put in Geoscape is a high-level code as to whether it's commercial, industrial, residential, mixed use. It's something of that level, but it doesn't actually go down sort of the 4 odd levels of full planning zones that the local government authorities handle.
So our planning zones are just a general indication. If you want actual authority information, you will have to go back to your local council and find out that information.
Yep. Also had, is it possible to get a hold of the raw data rather than package up like in GeoVision? Yes, you can access Geoscape in full raw data formats through our resellers, and then you've also got a number of ways in which they can help customers out as well. And Dave, I'm glad I saw your office, but since then I've moved well away from it. Geoscape's plans for international unknown at this point in time. We certainly have a lot of interest to do it internationally, but we haven't started any projects at this stage. In terms of updates to the data, the 2 metre surface cover for urban areas will be recaptured every year. Any of the areas of major significant change in buildings will be captured roughly every 6 months to 12 months. There are areas such as Western Sydney type areas where there's large amounts of growth. The rest of the changes will be really sporadic around the country as we go into that maintenance process, and that's because there'll be different types of technical capabilities being used in the different areas. And about Melbourne, southeast Melbourne earlier, I can say from a discussion this morning that Melbourne is still likely to not be released until around December. We may have a little bit of a early look into that. I think probably in about August would be about the earliest, but probably September, I suspect.
So Geoscape doesn't include the full cadastre of the country, which is the whole product you're referring to. It only makes a reference persistent identifier link to the actual product. So the building CAD table will show you the CAD persistent identifier you will need to join to in the CAD-like products for you if you want that full information of the cadastre outline.
And Warwick, most definitely happy to discuss that with you. Because we deal with the addresses and cadastre and everything else, we do have a fair idea of change. However, we're happy for any source of change and building growth to come through into our systems to assist us in better analysing the maintenance requirements. All right. That's put us a little bit past time. If anybody would like further information or viewings of the data, please let us know or contact one of our resellers. As we said at the start, we'll send you an email link to the webinar content. That will also include a survey. As you can imagine, we worked hard to put all the content together, but we want to know if we've actually worked hard enough and that it's been appropriate and useful. So please tell us how it's landed And also, it gives you an opportunity to tell us what else it is that you would like to see in the future. So with that, we will give you back the rest of your afternoon. Thank you for your attendance, and also thank you for your great questions. There's some really cool ones in there.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.